Hello, and welcome to the Hamumu Halloween Home Horror Hoedown.
The podcast where we watch 31 horror movies throughout the hallowed month of October.
Ranging from the critically acclaimed to film school projects gone gruesomely awry.
And we take them all way too seriously.
I'm your host, Mike Hummel.
And I'm your host, Sully Hummel.
Now warning, we use a ghoulish number of spoilers, so watch the movies first.
Second warning, we don't know anything about anything, so don't take us seriously while we take these movies seriously. So, today, you picked Exhibit A.
I did.
Because it's a found footage film.
Oh no. Is it a film or a movie?
I feel like film is the inappropriate moniker for this.
Whatever.
Yes, it is found footage. So, this is our first found footage of the season. I'm sure it will not be our last.
It better not.
So Exhibit A was from, Prime says 2010, which means it was probably 2009, because usually it's off by a year. But anyway, somewhere around there. And we watched it on Amazon Prime. And this was the movie of one man's descent into madness.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way of describing it.
As it takes place in a very general family of four in a house in Leeds kind of way. So, where do you want to start with this? Can I say that, so we've established, dear listeners, this year we've established for ourselves the rule of we each pick 4 things to talk about for each movie, because we're trying not to have our podcast be 45 minutes long every time. Mm-hmm. Which, haha. This is going to be difficult for me because I am discovering that certain movies have so many little things that I want to talk about that it's very difficult to pick 4. So I just want to say, I had a very hard time picking
was that
4.
one of your 4?
No.
Dang it. Yeah, I don't have a lot to say, so why don't you just say everything and I'll just go, yeah.
So, podcast as normal.
Yes, podcast standard setting.
The Hummel life as normal.
Yes, it's just how we do things.
Okay.
Where do you start?
So, let's start as if this were a film. There were a few elements that I found. I think this is something I'm going to do this year, is I'm going to have a little box in my notes for cinematic elements that were used that I thought were either done well or done poorly.
Cameras.
They did use cameras.
Sound.
Yes. Sometimes there was light.
Sometimes, that's true. It wasn't always there.
Okay, so this whole movie was filmed on one handheld camera.
Yeah. And
at the very beginning, they go to the beach and it gets left on. So the idea is that on this tape, the entire tape is filled full of just watching them have a beach day where it's candid and they're not paying attention to the camera, right? Mm-hmm. And then of course they back it all up and they record other things over it, but we keep seeing these snippets of the beach day.
Yeah, just little torn bits in between the recordings.
Right. I thought that was awesome. I loved it.
That's one of my 4 notes.
Well, elaborate. How did it make your 4?
Well, I felt that was a really good structure, especially when at the very end of the movie you get a chunk of it, because, it's longer than the thing they recorded over, that we're recording over it. Yeah, it has a real effect on the mood and message.
So I liked that, they did a good job, I felt, of having the arc of Dad going from just zany, because he was annoying in the beginning. I never liked Dad.
Well, this was a dad joke dad. He
loved.
This is a thing that I figured out when I was in the bathroom in the middle of the movie. Michael Scott. This dad loves comedy, but is terrible at it.
Yes.
He's got a collection of comedy items, and he's just
this is Michael Scott if Michael Scott had a family.
Yeah, which good thing he never did, because this is what would happen.
Yes, he's definitely a dad joke dad. He's wacky and zany. He thinks he's hilarious. Mm-hmm. His teenage kids do not think he's hilarious. His wife thinks he's funny. Like, she appreciates the humor that he brings to her very stodgy, practical self, right?
Yeah.
But he takes it way too far.
Of course.
And then she has to clean up the mess, right? So I liked the way they showed him disintegrating from just wacky, zany, a little bit disconnected from everybody because he's so focused on his own humor and how he sees the world and how the world sees him, down to the depths that it reached. And it reached deep depths, people. Like, I'm going to assume that because we're a horror podcast, you know horrible things happen. But this one, trigger warnings, folks. Like, there are some pretty significant psychological things that go on in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's as horror actions go, it's mild. It's like, whatever. But it's...
We only saw
so
blood at the very end, like the last 10 minutes.
That's something I noticed was that I called back one cut of the dead because he's sitting there murdering his wife. Her head is off screen as he's murdering her, and there weren't big sprays of blood or anything, but he beats on her a little bit, and then he's kind of sitting there being sad about it. And you know while he's doing that, there's someone putting blood all over her face before he drags her back onto camera, which was great.
I didn't make that connection, but I do see it. Yep. So I liked the way they did that, and it definitely followed that arc well. But throwing in these little snippets of just straight up normal, everyday, we're getting along, we like each other, we're mostly having fun, like taking little bits of normal and flashing it through the disintegration made the disintegration that much more obvious.
Yeah.
And so then that last bit where they're just like, they're packing up from their day at the beach and it's just, you can feel how much they are a cohesive family on that beach day, and it so contrasts where they ended up.
So, how did they get there? Like, what happened to this guy that he got himself in so much trouble?
Okay, so one of my other points, we're going to skip away from my cinematic elements for a moment.
Right.
One of my other points was, at one point I made the note, this whole movie could have been avoided if this family didn't lie to each other to save face.
That's what the dad thought, too.
And then, 4 bullet points later, I made the note, I like how he took what I said earlier and proved me wrong. Because he dragged all their secrets out into the open and made everything so much worse.
Yeah. That was a whole thing where he was doing why are you being afraid of me? Stop being so afraid of me, and it's making me angry. That's a scary situation.
Nobody hates people being afraid more than someone who is abusing them.
Yeah.
He got really scary and really upsetting at the end.
Yeah.
And I thought he did a good job of it. Like, I actually felt like, I don't know, I guess I'm of two minds because I was enough out of the movie that I had the thought, this is a really intense scene to be acting. Like, all of these 4 people are working really hard right now. Like, I had that thought, which probably means they weren't working hard enough.
Maybe.
But it was intense.
It had that reality to it because, I mean, even after they had this crazy, basically, dad is the stalker monster in their house that they're hiding from scene, after that, they still have kind of some family togetherness of sorts before it's all over. And it's like, there is that, in reality. You can't just say, well, that's it. He's a killer. Let's worry about that. I mean, he hadn't killed anyone yet, but, they knew he had beaten that guy.
Right.
And no.
And the things, at that point, it was definitely an interesting situation because I think that's what is scary about this movie, is that the possibility that you don't realize how broken someone's mental state is until it's too late. Like, that's a thing that happens, and so many women and so many families get caught in that situation where, like, you're trying to make it okay, you're trying to fix it, you're trying to understand, and help them and do your part. And you don't realize the other person is broken beyond what you can fix yourself in that moment. And I think that's what happened. Like, you asked, how did they get to this point? Well, it started that it was just straight up lying about things that happened because he was embarrassed. You know, he didn't get the promotion and they thought he did. And he was like, I got it. So he was odd, but not dangerous odd. He was just like, okay, I would find him annoying, but clearly his wife saw something in it. You know, who knows what people see in their significant others. I rarely know. I managed to find the perfect person for me, so...
Who is obnoxious and makes jokes all the time.
I think the idea is that that's a thing that everybody does. I mean, maybe not everybody, but just about everybody lies at some point in their life to save face. But then you add that to him, the individual of him that had this other underlying issue that came out because of the pressure. And I think that's the formula for this movie.
It built up because then he was just stacking the lies. But man, he was just so dumb. Everything he was doing was wrong. And he was so bad at everything. Which gets to kind of a angle this movie had for me, which was kind of, it's hard to describe it because it's not toxic masculinity. He wasn't, caught up in being tough or whatever, but it is white male privilege something. There's a thing there where he was like, come on everybody, I'm having fun, have fun with me. Everyone has to fit my plan and be doing what I want to be doing.
It's interesting that you say that, and for those who have listened to these before, here we are in our very first Sully takes things way too seriously moment of the season. It's interesting that you say that because I think that we have seen that over and over and over again on the news recently, that if you are a middle-aged white guy of decent income, you can act crazy and people will just assume that you're being funny or whatever. Like, they just kind of stand back. Like the scene in the movie where he's trying to get people to dance with him after Ray has come and confronted him and he almost gets caught having, that whole thing outed that he was the one who beat Ray up. And he's like wildly, frantically dancing on this layer of sand he put over his lawn in front of the homemade swimming pool he built.
Yeah, that's where we were.
The guy was intense. And everyone, all his neighbors at the party were just, like, they were clearly uncomfortable. They were all backing away from him. They were all giving him space. But nobody was like, hey, I think we should call the cops, or I'm going to pull out a gun, or grab a shovel.
That's why it's England and not America.
Well, that's true. But, like, these days, and it is England, and I don't know what England is like with this, but if this had taken place in America, and that person had been anyone other than a middle-aged white guy, something would have been done at that point.
And that's where we are.
Yeah.
And then he killed his family.
So, okay, when I was talking about how the arc went, and I felt like it was believable, I was on board with it. The one point where I wasn't on board was things got to the point where he's talking about how, there's only one thing I can do. And I'm like, okay, here we go. Angel of Mercy, he's going to kill his whole family. Like, I was ready for it. And then he starts talking about how his daughter's going to grow up and he's not going to see it. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay. He's only talking about himself. He's not planning on taking everybody with him. Okay. I mean, it's not great. It's not okay. But it's better than what I was expecting.
Do not try this at home.
Yes. Disclaimer. And then his daughter somehow sees him or whatever and comes in and he's like giving her a hug. And somewhere in the middle of that hug, he went from, I'm going to remove myself from this equation to the Angel of Mercy, I have to take them all with me. It's the only way to save them mentality.
I mean, that was the impulsive thing, and it was, he was doing that all the time, that sudden change of plans, because the situation has changed a little bit, and I'm not going to think this through. I'm just going to do what feels right. And that begins the snuff film portion of the movie.
Right?
Yeah.
It was, and he's through the whole thing saying, well, it wasn't supposed to hurt. Like, right, because bludgeoning and suffocation are the two best known peaceful ways to die.
Yeah.
Like, what?
I mean, that was, again, the justification after the fact.
Very much so. Yeah, everything that he did. It was whatever he wanted to do in the moment, or whatever he felt he had to do in the moment, and then trying to explain it away afterwards.
Yeah, and I can kind of identify with that, this idea that, our brains really do make decisions before we know we're making the decision, and then we justify it. And he's kind of just doing that. He's spends his whole life justifying something he did for no reason at all.
Yeah.
Which is
I
bad.
think if you let your brain do that and you don't have the secondary, like, okay, my brain has decided this is what we're going to do, let's think it through. Like, there's a check or balance or, like, there's a way to stop yourself from doing every thought that comes into your head. He just didn't have that safety engaged in any way.
Yeah.
And in a way, his wife was the safety. Like that was what their relationship was, which is a pretty toxic, codependent relationship when you really think about it.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Because he was the wacky person and she was the straight man in their duo. And so it was really her job to kind of rein him in.
That's an interesting take, because it feels like this movie pulls that thread of the sweater and unravels it.
Yeah.
Like,
the
what
whole
happens? Time he's pulling away from that control, and she's going, all right, whatever, and that's what happens when he's set loose.
Right. Or, because there were times when the whole movie is about how he keeps making decisions that she can't undo for him. She can't clean up. She can't fix them. And then the added fact that he's hiding the need to clean it up in the first place.
Yeah.
It all accumulates. But, like, psychologically, that was very interesting. That being said, everything I've said so far makes it sound like I really enjoyed this movie. I'm saying a lot of positive things about it.
Okay.
But one of my notes is somehow terrifying and boring at the same time.
I didn't find that same thing. I was really interested. Like, I don't know, it's like it didn't dissolve quickly. Like, it was mostly just this family movie of kind of a creepy dad. But I kept wondering what all the different parts were. So I was interested, but there's not a lot going on, really. It's just, there kind of is, if you think of it like as a crime movie or something, like he's getting himself into this trouble, and it's a problem.
Well, and to a certain degree, the decision to have this be a found footage film put that constraint on them, because, like, it couldn't just come out. Like, none of this stuff could just come out. We couldn't just watch him beat up Ray. We couldn't just watch him get fired, or, he didn't get fired, but, like, we couldn't just watch him miss out on the promotion. He had to, like, these things had to come out organically as mostly the daughter was filming things. So, like, all these pieces of information about these characters had to be woven into these random daily exchanges that they were having.
Yeah, and there was definitely a case of, why are you filming this, and all that throughout the movie. There was all kinds of that, and convenient camera syndrome, where they're like, I'll just set this down over here, and oh look, it's pointing right at what's happening.
Well, that is absolutely true, but at the same time, when you have a found footage film that has multiple POVs, usually I get really annoyed at how the camera gets passed off to, from one person to another. Like, it's like passing a baton, and I'm like, what? No, stop. What are you doing? This is so unnatural. And I actually liked the way that was handled in this movie. Like, anytime the camera was moved from one person to another, it was done like the brother was being annoying and, like, grabbed it from the sister, or One of them dropped it because something was happening and another one came and picked it up. And it was conveniently pointed so that we didn't have to piece together from what we were hearing. But I thought they did the multiple POV part of it better than a lot of found footage films.
Definitely better than many situations. There was parts where I was like, it's a shame this is found footage. Like when there were 2 different times in the movie where they needed to play what was on the camera. And so because of that, the movie just jumps to after they played it.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, that's kind of... We missed the very dramatic scene in which this crazy footage was seen by people.
Yeah.
And then it's also weird that they started filming again afterwards. They're like, oh, hold on, let me get that camera back, and then we'll have this argument about it.
Well, part of my note about how I sort of liked how they did the POV was, if you accept the fact that they're all obsessed with recording everything they do,
which is a standard in found footage.
Which is why I struggle with them every time. Like, I'm just like, nobody would be doing this.
I buy into it to varying degrees. Like, I mean, I let it go, basically, to varying degrees.
Yeah.
I don't believe it ever, but it can be acceptable.
Oh, the one part that I didn't like was, and it stopped happening a lot toward the end, but it was happening a lot at the beginning. The daughter was doing this voiceover thing.
Yeah.
And it was so expository. Like, I'm watching what's happening. Like, I don't need you to explain to me why we're seeing this bit of it. Like, it doesn't make sense that she would be explaining to the camera why she's recording what she's recording. Yeah,
there were definitely some lines that were thrown in there. But I thought some of them were interesting because it made me think of the book/TV series You, when she's filming Claire and going, there's your mom. She's putting your stuff on the washing line.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I was left wondering in like the first half of the movie if like she was going to start killing people, or maybe she would kill the neighbor girl, and then there would be like this whole mystery about it. But no, it was
just the dad.
It was dad.
Yeah, there was an interesting little side love triangle happening between herself, the neighbor girl, and her brother. And I mean, it almost feels... Okay, it made the characters more real because it gave them sides. Like the daughter in particular is a much more well-rounded character because of that. Even the son, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know why she liked him, but okay.
But I think they were closer in age. Like, I think the daughter was a little bit younger.
She was younger.
But it felt mostly like that whole love triangle thing was in there because it wasn't really long enough to be a whole movie without it, and they needed like a B story to flush it out.
Well, that's the trouble with these kind of movies, is basically all you've got in the movie is this dissolution of sanity. Mm-hmm. So all you can do is just a series of scenes of increasing insanity. So you kind of...
Yeah.
It's a question of how much there should be and what do we actually need to see.
But the thing is, there are times when those side stories are woven in a way where they come together in some way. There was no real resolution. I mean, she gave back the basketball outfit that she had stolen off the line.
Yeah, I don't know how that went. That's weird.
But that was it. Like, that was the entire resolution of the whole thing. And I'm like, well... Then why? What was the point?
Yeah, I don't
Other
know.
than for the daughter to have a secret to be outed.
It wasn't a lot of point.
And really? They made a bigger deal out of the revelation that the daughter was attracted to the neighbor girl than they did over finding out that their son was getting attention from people in their own bedroom. Like,
is that what that's called? Okay.
I mean, I went through a series of ways I could express that in my head, but most of them were unacceptable for the rating we stick with.
Stick with that description. That's very good.
But honestly, of those two, one of them is much more upsetting to me than the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they weren't really upset by it. They were just surprised by it.
Yeah,
they talked
about it a lot.
I liked the laundry day motif that went through it, though. Did you notice that, like, it was all about hanging the clothes on the line next door. And then there was the point where he was watching the washing machine go.
True.
And the whole, like, it all, at that point I was like, oh, dirty laundry. He's going to air their dirty laundry. His dirty laundry's being aired. Like, oh, there's a whole theme happening here.
That sounds artsy.
It fizzled a little bit at the end, but it was there for a minute.
What I was seeing here, which I thought was kind of an interesting note, this, to me, I was feeling like I was watching The Shining, except there was no supernatural excuse for his insanity, which is kind of interesting. I mean, in The Shining, it's basically a metaphor, but it's still there. Like, there's still a monster, a ghost, driving him mad, and here it's just, guess what? It just happens.
Yeah, he just snaps. Like, there's an issue with his brain chemistry that drives him to do these terrible things, which that's my kind of horror movie.
I know it is.
I like when the scariness is that people are terrifying, because I believe that. Like, I watch that and I'm like, yeah, this is scary because this could happen. I watch The Shining and I'm like, yep, I don't believe in any of that, so I'm good. Like, I'm much more likely to have nightmares about a regular guy deciding he needs to kill his whole family because that's the only way to keep them safe, because that stuff happens.
It does happen. And I was, when I see found footage, I want there to be a ghost. That's the whole reason for found footage. And it was maybe a third of the way through this movie where I was like, there's no chance that, from the beginning, I didn't think there was going to be a ghost because it's called Exhibit A. It's like, it's a crime thing. But like they were looking at the house they were going to buy, and I'm like, oh, they're going to move into that house and it's haunted. Like, that's what happens.
Yeah, I did have that thought.
But very quickly it was like, no, that's not where we're going with this, and there's no chance that there will be a ghost. Oh, well.
Sad, Mikey.
Yeah.
What did you think of the decision to leave the camera downstairs after he strangled his daughter, and he goes upstairs where his son and his wife are sleeping? He leaves the camera, and so for a significant period of time, couple minutes,
5 minutes, 7 minutes, I don't know, it's a while.
Maybe not that long.
I said 5 to 7 minutes.
Okay. But for a significant period of time, movie time, we are sitting, we can see like the legs of the daughter who is newly dead, and we're just staring at this doorway where we know that we just watched him go up the stairs off screen, and we're listening to the noises from upstairs. And what did you think of that choice?
All I could think about the whole time was, she has to lay there perfectly still. And this is all, this is one shot. It's going to be, this whole scene is one shot. And how many times did they do this over and over? And she's just laying there, not moving at all.
Yeah. So that makes me forgive. I never realized that one shot thing until you pointed out, because I just don't pay attention to that. But now I am a little more willing to forgive the 2 times that I saw, once the son and once the wife, where he's trying to reposition them after they're dead, and he's like dragging them, and he lets go of their arm and their arm stays up in the air, and I'm like, well, that person's not dead.
Well, and we found out later neither was the daughter. So
well, okay, so
that was intentional.
I was thinking about that as you were setting up in here, and I'm like, oh, Exhibit A, she is alive. Because I was going to ask you, do you think she lived?
I do.
Exhibit A, she definitely lived. This, although there's no trial to be had. Wait, was the dad alive or dead?
He was alive at the end. I mean, it doesn't mean he didn't do anything after.
Yeah, because he was all, I'll join you soon.
Yeah.
And you were like, 30 years later.
Yeah, you know how he is and how good his decision making is.
Oh yeah. No, he was definitely the kind of guy that you would think would kill his entire family as like a family murder thing, and then at the last minute be like, you know what? I don't think it's my time.
Yeah, you guys, good luck.
I don't think I can do it. So Exhibit A tells me that he is still alive and she is still alive, and this was like the trial of him up for murder twice over an attempted murder and who knows what else.
She wouldn't have to be alive for him to be going to trial, but she was.
Yeah, I think she was.
Ratings.
You know, I found myself enjoying this much more than I would expect for this kind of movie. Like, I don't know, like watching the crazy guy, it's not my thing, and I don't know, having him dance and be like, come on, dance with me, like that, I don't like that. It's very upsetting to watch that kind of stuff. And I really did not like the actual death part. Like, it was a snuff film, but it was also even not interesting or anything. It was like kind of dumb. And also, oh my gosh, she took forever to strangle, which is very realistic. And
it wasn't supposed to hurt.
Yeah, that was a lot of strangling. So overall, I did enjoy this movie, but it's not great and whatever. I'm gonna give this one a wonderful 3 basketball kits out of 5. Yeah, just kind of down the middle. It was not bad. And I think it was well done. It was well acted and whatnot. Like, this was, for found footage especially, it felt well put together.
I'm having a hard time rating this one because I agree with you that it was very middle of the road. But at the same time, it appealed to me in certain ways. The aspects of this man disintegrating from normal entitled white guy nonsense to he should be locked up, but nobody's going to lock him up because he can do whatever he wants because he's a white guy.
Yeah.
There was something there that was scary and was real to me. And the fact that he doesn't understand why he's the bad guy. He keeps asking, how did I get to be the baddie here?
Yeah.
When it's so obvious from watching it why he's the bad guy, but he truly doesn't know. And even when she tries to explain it to him, because she still is in that role of trying to fix things for him, he says, I refuse to accept that. Like, he just cannot accept responsibility for the choices that he has made that have brought them to this place. And he continues to not accept responsibility even past that point. It was scary in that realistic way, while also failing to actually be really all that scary. Sort of like how an off-brand ice cream sandwich is tasty, but not really tasty. So I'm going to give this movie 3.5 basketball kits out of 5.
Okay.
Because I almost want to give it a 4, but I just can't quite.
All right. Well, I think we have talked excessively, and we should move on to our next movie. So, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Are we doing whatever that thing's called? It's called ASMR. Are we doing ASMR? We super are doing ASMR. But ASMR is weird.